A bowl game isn't good enough.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys all for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. A bowl game isn't good enough anymore for Maryland football. And when I say that, I mean just checking off the box of saying we made it to the bowl game. We had a winning season. We had a 7-win season, or whatever the case may be, to just getting to a bowl game. I don't think that's good enough anymore for Mike Locksley. I think Mike Locksley has done an awesome, great job, whatever words you want to use. He has done a really good job of rebuilding this program and allowing it to reach a new place that it hasn't reached in a long while, since probably around 2014, 2013, where we went 7-6. In 2013, our last year in the ACC where we went 7-6. But ever since those couple of years, ever since 2014, we haven't had very many winning seasons until the last 3 years. We actually haven't had any winning seasons. But now we've put together 3 winning seasons under Coach Locksley, and Coach Locksley's completely turned it over from his first year in 2019, where he went 3-9 as the Terps coach, and the next year 2-3, the COVID year. And then 2021 all the way up to 7-6 and won his first bowl game. But at the end of the day, we have done that for 3 straight years now, have winning seasons, have made it to really solid bowl games. And I just don't think that it's good enough. And again, Coach Locksley has done a great job of fixing the mess that Coach Durkin left and getting this program to a place that it just hasn't been in a while. It just hasn't been consistent, hasn't been this solid in a really long time. It's been horrible football for Maryland football. I think that's why we're still getting some of the fan base back, and we're still working on getting people to games and all those different things. It's because we haven't had a tradition over the last decade of being any good. So it's something that we're not exactly used to, winning seasons and winning these types of games and just being solid overall. Like, we've taken this program to the next level and we continue to climb. But my thing is, 3 years in a row, we've had 8 to 7 wins. 3 years ago, we had a 7-win season. And in the past 2 years, we've had 8-win seasons, which again, very solid for this Maryland program. 2021, we went 7-6. In the last 2 years, we have gone 8-5. I think it's time for the next jump under Coach Locksley. And to be completely honest, I think there's a shot that this season is a year that we regress. Usually success is not linear. Usually doesn't keep on going up. But in terms of Coach Locksley, he has added a win every single year he's been the coach, or has stayed the same. The last 2 years, we've stayed the same with 8 wins. But other than that, every single year, his win total went up. And so I believe that it's time to take the next step. And usually it's not that linear, but I think that we can't have the goal of just making another bowl game. Is there a realistic chance that this year we regress and things don't go as well as we might think they can? Yes, I think that's entirely possible. There's new quarterback. There's a lot of new starters. There's a lot of new offensive linemen, 5 new offensive linemen that are going to be starting. Can the season go not as good as we want it to and not as good as it's gone the last couple of years? Yes, entirely possible. But I think that in terms of the goal and what we want to accomplish, and at the end of the season, are we going to say, did we improve as a program? Did we hit another level? Even if it's a small tick up, I think just getting to a bowl game and just saying we got to a bowl game, I just don't think that's good enough anymore for the Terps. I think our roster is getting to a point where it's amongst a lot of the really solid ones in the Big Ten. Obviously, it's no Ohio State, it's no Oregon, it's no USC quite yet. It might not even be quite with a team like, let's say, a Wisconsin or something like that. But I think that our roster is definitely in a pretty good spot in terms of the others in the Big Ten. And time will tell this year how well it actually comes together. But I say that we're in a pretty good spot overall. And I think it's time to take the next step as a program. And when we look at the Big Ten, and getting rid of the divisions is absolutely huge for the Terps. Under the divisions and under the old construction of the Big Ten, where we had the two sides and we were on by far the harder side. It wasn't even close. We were on the harder side with three of the juggernauts in the Big Ten, with Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan, and you almost were penciling those in as 3 losses already on your year. So you're, in terms of your ceiling as a team, it already felt like, oh, we kind of got to add 3 losses unless Maryland comes up with a huge upset, which just hadn't really happened. And so I think now that you get rid of the Big Ten divisions, I think you have a much better shot at taking this next level. So I think it's honestly the expansion of the Big Ten. I think it really does help the Terps. And I know a lot of people might think of it as, oh, it helps the Terps make another jump in terms of maybe competing for a Big Ten championship, but that's not really how I see it. I see it as we don't have to play 3 of the top 10 teams in the country. Like last year, Ohio State finished as one of a top 10 team in the country. Even though they struggled in the bowl game and lost to Michigan, they were still, in my books, a top 10 country. Michigan was the best team in the country. Penn State, finishes as a top 12 program in the country. So you had to play 3 of the top 12 to 15 teams in the country. That's really hard to do. You don't quite have to do that anymore. And that's why I think the getting rid of the Big Ten divisions this year allows for Maryland to take this next step that we haven't seen the Terps being able to take, because we've had 3 games where we pencil in a loss. And so that's a big reason why I say you get rid of the Big Ten divisions, and you also had 3 straight winning seasons, 2 straight 8-win seasons. And I just want to say, like, getting to a bowl game, just going 7-6 or whatever the case may be, isn't good enough, in my opinion. You've won 3 of them too. It's not like, oh, we've been to 3 straight bowl games, now we want to actually win them. It's like, no, we've won 3 straight. We won the Music City Bowl game. We won the Dukes Mayo Bowl game. We won the Pinstripe Bowl, where we've beaten like teams like Virginia Tech. We beat in Auburn. Like, we've done some of those things. And so now it's time to take the next step as a program. We've seen the recruiting take the next step. We've seen the 2025 class take a next step as a top 25 class and the best class under Coach Loxley. And maybe it's more of a thing where in the next couple of years, the next step has to be taken once some of these recruiting classes come through that are been near our better classes. But I just don't think that you look at this team and you say, yeah, it's a successful season because we went 7-6 this year and it was a bowl game. Like, no, let's try and reach a new height. And I think that's possible over these next, maybe it's not this year. Like I said, success isn't usually linear, but over these next couple of years, let's not just measure it because we made it to a bowl game. We made it to the Pinstripe Bowl game again, and we beat some solid program. Let's look at the next thing. Maybe we can win maybe we can get to a 9-win season and reach an even better bowl game, or maybe we can upset a big-time team that we haven't upset yet, like a USC, which I talked about. Maybe we can do one of those things and reach a new level of program where we say, okay, we actually got better because, yeah, we made it to a bowl game. Maybe it's still an 8-win season, but we beat USC at our place. Or we gave Oregon another run for their money at Eugene or something like that. Do something different this year than just saying we made it to the Music City Bowl game, or, oh, we made it to the Pinstripe Bowl game. And I'm not saying, when people hear me say a bowl game isn't good enough, I think they automatically think playoffs, like college football playoffs with the new 12-team playoffs. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying reach something new, get to a 9-win season, upset a top 25 opponent, do something special like that. Maybe you beat Iowa too. I'm just saying, take the next step as a program where going to a place that we haven't been, because I've seen kind of 3 straight seasons where it's very similar, which is where we need it to be, where it's consistent. It's 7 to 8 win seasons, but I want our program to take the next step and be able to get to the next level. Where does Roman Hemby and the rest of our running back room ranked compared to the rest of the Big Ten? And there's some really good backs in the Big Ten. I'll talk about that after this ad from FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down and we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to, but FanDuel lets you keep going whenever you want. All you have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. Football season is around the corner. I know a lot of you guys like to bet on these NFL games, so make sure you go check out FanDuel. As the summer winds down, FanDuel is going to have plenty of football that you can bet on, whether it's the opening game of the Ravens versus Chiefs in the NFL, and you can do that where the Chiefs are 3-point favorites, and you can bet on that. You can do all these different things on FanDuel. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. There's also baseball games for the rest of the summer and into the fall season. So if you want to bet on baseball, you can do that on FanDuel, because FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. How do the Maryland running backs compare to the rest of the Big Ten? Would I rank us amongst the best in the Big Ten? When I think about the Big Ten this year, running the football is going to be huge, not only for Maryland football, but the entire conference. And honestly, that's what the Big Ten's been known for. But even with some of these other teams coming from the Pac-12, where all they did was throw the football all over the place, and it seems like offense was huge, this is still a running league, and there's a lot of really good backs. A lot of the top backs in the country, if you really look at it, are in this conference in the Big Ten. So I was thinking about it, and I was reading a couple of lists, and I was like, okay, so there's a couple of really good backs in the Big Ten conference. I think a lot of the best backs in the country, like I said, are in the Big Ten. And I was like, where do the Maryland backs ranked compared to the rest of them? And you mainly think of Roman Hemby, because when you think of the best backs in the Big Ten, you got to think of guys that have proven themselves. And yeah, I love Coley McDonald, but he's not a guy that you consider a top back in the Big Ten yet. You just wouldn't consider him a top back in the Big Ten. Nolan Ray is interesting because I think he potentially could get there and has the tools, but he hasn't done it yet. He hasn't really had any carries. He hasn't really had any production, so you can't really say that. But I'm curious, like, where do we rank in the Big Ten running backs? Because there's a ton of really good backs. And how I kind of came up with it is Roman Hemby is on the next tick down. There's the Big Ten elite, and there are a lot of elite guys in the Big Ten this year. And I think Roman Hemby's just a tick below the elite. I'd have him somewhere from the 7 to 10 range in terms of backs in the Big Ten, which I think is really good when you hear some of the names that are above him. But I think that Roman Hemby, in terms of his actual carries and his yardage, and when it comes down to his statistics, could be the best. A lot of people don't realize that last year, Roman Hemby led the Big Ten in receiving yards in terms of running backs. So I think it's fair to say that if he's not the best receiving back in the conference, he's second, he's third. Like, he's one of the best receiving backs in the entire conference. And so how I look at this conference and how I look at the backs is the running game is going to determine a lot. It is going to be like, whoever runs the football the best in the Big Ten could potentially have the best team. And I think when you look at Ohio State, they possibly have the best 2 backs in the conference. I'd probably say they have the best duo. Penn State could have something to say to that, but Ohio State's backs are pretty crazy this year with Travion Henderson, who 2023 had 156 carries for 926, and they got that kid from Ole Miss, Junkins, who, if you play NCAA, you know that Junkins is a problem, but Junkins is a really good back who they got from Ole Miss, and he comes from the SEC. He probably would have been the best back in the SEC last year, but now they pair him with Travion Henderson, and I'm like, dang. So I'd say Ohio State, those two are probably the best. And then Donovan Edwards now gets the bulk of the carries. You don't got to worry about Blake Corum, and he's got to be right behind that tick of Judkins and Travion Henderson. And then I look over at Kyle Manyunga at Rutgers, and I say he's right there as well. And then you look at guys like Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton at Penn State, and they're also right there. And Jordan James at Oregon's a really good player. And those are probably my guys that I would say are the best. And I would say are probably amongst the elite or and those guys are all in contention to have the best probably statistical year and the best year overall and be some of the top backs in the country. And I think that, like I said, the Big Ten's a really big rushing team this year, but I think Roman Hemby's a tick below those guys, but he's just barely below those guys. I do think that if the blocking goes well, if he plays the way that he can, and he has some more of that 2022 season in him rather than last year's 2023 season, I do think that Roman Hemby can be a really good player for Maryland football. And there's a couple different reasons why I think he's going to be elite. Number one, I think the receiving back part of it. I think that our quarterback room it's going to be weird this year. It's going to be different than Talia. It might not be as many passes. It might not be as many downfield shots. It might not be as much as that. So I think when we have a guy like Roman Hemby who can come out of the running back room and pass catches, who led the Big Ten receiving yards last year in terms of running backs, I think that's going to be really benefit a Billy Edwards or an MJ Morris. I think there's going to be plenty of screens, plenty of checkdowns, plenty of receiving game. If we can't get the run game going, then we're going to look to get the ball in his hands. So I think in terms of all-purpose yards, he could do a really good job at that. But he's also just explosive. Like, if you give him a little bit of space, he can make things happen. And when I look at him and Nolan Ray, those two guys together, a lot of people in the Big Ten aren't going to think of them when the national conversation comes up about who's the best in the Big Ten. But at the end of the year, I think Roman Hemby is going to be right there with all those different guys in terms of statistics. And the one thing I always like to tell you guys, Mel Kiper had Roman Hemby number 2 on his running back big board last year before a couple games in the season, before he started playing a little bit poorly and everything. But I do think that Nolan Ray, Colby McDonald, and Roman Hemby are some of the best 3 in the Big Ten. The powerhouses, the big programs, the Blue Bloods, Ohio State, Penn State, they all have a really good backs. Rutgers has a really good back. But I think that Maryland's running game, if the offensive line is right, which is a big if, can be just okay and be right there a tick below if the blocking is okay. And I really do believe that we could be more of a running football team this year. And Coach Loxley said it himself. What is the worst that can happen this season for Maryland football? What if everything doesn't go the way we want it to go? I'll talk about that after this ad from the Gametime app. Have you ever wanted to go to a game at the last minute, like a Maryland Terrapins game, but finding tickets is hard? I've been there before. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Gametime has deals on tickets right at the start of an event and even an hour after it starts. It's a place to find last-minute seats and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. What is the worst that could happen this year for Maryland football? If we take a huge step back this year, I think that it could hurt us in potentially a couple of different ways. One, recruiting. Our recruiting is absolutely on fire right now in terms of the 2025 class, and we want that energy going into the 2026 class as well. And I think the 2026 class can be pretty comparable to the 2025 class. But if we take a step back on the field, it could become bad. Things could start to fall apart. Things could start to become worse in terms of recruiting. And so I think that's why it's important to say, even with all this new stuff and a lot of the new quarterback and the new offensive line and new corners and all those different things that is new this year, I think it's important to stay solid. We don't got to go for 10 wins. We don't even got to go for 9 wins. And yeah, I said a bowl game isn't good enough, but I think it's important to at least get 7, 8 wins and stay about where you are. So that means winning the games you're supposed to win. So you need to win early. Like I said, the first 6 games are all manageable. We probably need to go 5-1 in that stretch. But I'm here to talk about, what if everything goes bad? What if we drop the first 2 real games to Michigan State and UVA? What if we lose to USC, Oregon, Iowa, and we lose the games that we're supposed to lose, and Penn State? What if we lose to Rutgers? What if we have a record that looks like 4-8 or something like that? I think those are entirely possible. I think that's the worst that we could probably be. I want to take a peek at the Maryland schedule and say, what is probably the worst that we could be this year? And what would that mean? I think when you look at, if we're playing poorly and we're at the bottom of the Big Ten, which we've been before, and teams take setbacks, teams take big setbacks. I think that there's a couple things that would have to happen. I think our quarterback room would have to be a disaster, and things would be going terrible in the quarterback room. It's not working out in the quarterback room. Things aren't right in the Maryland quarterback room. I think that could happen. And then you look at the rest of the team and you say our offensive line isn't good, our defense isn't taking a step under Coach Williams, which we kind of expect them every year seem to get better, and then the defense flattens out, isn't that good. I think that's possible. And you look at these games, UConn and Villanova are the only 2 games on the schedule that are, we're definitely going to win. So you say they're going to at least get those, but what if we drop Michigan State and Virginia September 7th and September 14th? What if we drop those? What if we drop the Northwestern game? Maybe we beat Indiana, but what if we start the year like that? We start the year like 3-3. That could be potentially horrible if we start the year 3-3, because then we have USC at home, and it's like that could potentially definitely be a loss. 3-4. What about Minnesota? We get Minnesota on the road. Could we drop that too before we go to Oregon? Maybe, and that would put us at what, 3-5? And then Oregon would probably lose to. That put us at 3-6. And Rutgers next week, maybe we come up with a win against Rutgers, 4-6, and then we lose to Iowa and Penn State, and we're 4-8. That doesn't sound great for Maryland football at 4-8. I think at our floor, at our worst, it's probably a 4-win season. Because the games that are up in the air, that are tosses, I would say, I think that's fair to say. Every Big Ten opponent is probably up in the air. It's probably a toss. That's not Oregon, USC, Penn State. I think everyone else is probably a toss-up. USC is like right there. Same with Iowa. It's a game where you could potentially win, but not quite. And so it's like you probably could potentially win, but I'd still consider it an upset. Iowa is still right there too. And so it's interesting, but I think that at our floor, at our worst season possible, we're probably around a 4-win type of team. And so I don't think that'll happen. I think we'll probably be around 7 again, but I think that at our floor, and if the quarterback room doesn't look right and the offensive line doesn't look right, I think we could be around a 4-win team for the Terps. And that's not where we want to be, but I think that's a possibility for Maryland football. We've been there before in the past. If you remember, on 2018, 5-7, 2017, 4-8, 2015, 3-9. We've been there before under some shaky coachy play. So we've gotten used to winning a lot of games, but it hasn't always been that for Maryland football. So is the step back possible? I think it is. Do I think it'll happen? No. But I just was thinking, what if everything went bad? What if the defense wasn't that good? What if the quarterback play was poor? What if we just couldn't find the running game? And what if just things weren't going right? 4-8, I think, could be possible. And you don't want that to happen, because then it could affect other parts of your football team. People could transfer. Recruiting class is going to be good. People could flip, all these different things, which I think is important. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.